All right. Yeah, we can start today. So, in the last classes we have seen Docker file, right? I mean, how to write Docker file, build our own images, and of course, few things to reduce the Docker image size overall. What precautions can we take and everything. So, next topic will be Docker Compose. Docker Compose. So to keep it in one line, what is Docker Compose? We can say it's a multi-container service. Multi-container service. What does that mean? Let's see it. Let's say you want to run three containers. Let's say you want to run for example, let's say you have an application you want to deploy as a container. So obviously, so for Java you need one container. For front end code you need another container, maybe Nginx. Let's take that as an example. Got it? So now what you do generally, let's say we want to create two containers. So what you do generally now? What we'll do simple. We use the docker run command, right, to run. Simple. Simply what we do. Docker run -d -p 80 hyphen name print UI nginx alpine. This is one container. I'll create like this. It'll take some time, don't worry. And now I want to run one more container. So what I do, simple again, I'll run one more time. Docker run -d -p maybe what else? 8080 colon 8080 tomcat 9. This is for yeah. Like this I'll write, right? Usually. That's how I create containers so far. But imagine your application maybe or you got a requirement to run 10 containers. You can't run like this, right? 10 times. Of course, you can run, but not a good practice though, not a good thing though to run every time. Or sometimes we have to run 100 containers because it's required. And one more requirement here is whatever we are running here, two containers, maybe 10, maybe 100, all of them need to talk to each other. All of them need to talk to each other. That is one more requirement. Of course, by default, Docker run also, we can create our own network and we can run all our containers in that network, which they'll communicate each other. But it's like becoming like a repeated thing. How many times you run Docker run command? How many times? I want to run 10 containers. How many times you run? It's not a good practice, right? That's why we have something called Docker Compose. Docker Compose simply is an YAML file, just like how we wrote in Ansible. It's an YAML file actually. So where we define the containers in that file and we execute the file. So what happens, you remember, imagine like, Ansible task, ad hoc commands. We write ad hoc commands. Instead of that, what we do, we write a playbook with multiple tasks so that we execute a playbook, all the tasks will be executed, right? I mean, based on whatever we wrote. Similarly here also, instead of creating separate containers every time, we just create one YAML file and then we execute that file. Then what happens, whatever the container information present in that, it will read that and it will create the containers at a time. At a time, I'm telling you, okay. We write a file, we execute the file, all the containers will be created at the time, and by default, Docker Compose will create its own network and they are all can communicate each other. That is the advantage. So now 10 containers are there, or let's take simple example for now. Two containers are these two containers I want to create at a time instead of running like this. So what I do, I'll write a Docker Compose file. I mean the YAML file, Docker Compose file we call it. And then I'll execute that file, that's it. It will create these two containers and it will create one network also for these two networks so that they can communicate each other. That's all. That's the use of Docker Compose. The only thing is how do we write it? How do we write? What is the syntax and everything? Syntax is YAML. And how do we write it? It's very simple actually. See, whatever you're giving here, Docker run you gave hyphen d hyphen p port number hyphen name something image. Same thing will give in the Docker Compose file only. Same information, because with the Docker Compose, as I told you, we're just creating a container, not anything else. So whatever required for the container will pass in the file itself, except that in a YAML format. That's it. That's the only thing. Got it? That's the only thing. So now how to see, how to write and all that we'll see. By default, the name will should be like, Docker, sorry, Docker hyphen compose dot YML or YAML, both are same. Or you can give any file, but default this is the file name it will expect. But yeah, you can give any name, no worries. Before writing the file, what we have to do is we have to make sure Docker Compose is installed or not. You know what happens? This Docker Compose does not come with Docker by default. We have to install as a separate package. apt or yum install work fine. There is no issues. You can install through those package managers. This is part of Docker only, but not part of a Docker package what we install. Got it? So now let's write a file. Let's delete these containers. I don't want it, because we'll create through Docker Compose now. We don't need to run Docker commands, blah blah and everything. Oh, sorry, I deleted the images. Sorry. Let's delete the containers. Images, let it exist. Sorry. Simple write an ML file. So let me open ML lint. It's an as I told you, it's an ML file. So obviously I'll use ML lint hyphen 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 start of the ML file, or without this also it works fine. There is no worries. Now first thing we have to define is version. The version which we'll be using for the compose file. So there are lots of versions: 2, 3, 3.5, 3.9, 3.3. You can use anything. Don't use 2, it's too old. Nowadays we don't use it. From 3 version you can use able to use anything. Let's say 3.3 or 3. That is also fine. Just simply. It is the version for the file which we are writing, not for the compose version or not the Docker version. This version 3 is the Docker compose file version which we use. So first thing we have to define is version. Next thing, obviously, services. In compose terminology, we call containers as services. That's it. So inside the services, we'll write our containers. No matter how many, we'll write it. Let's say Nginx, right? First thing. So what should be service name? Maybe service name UI or something, or front end, whatever it is. Next, this is a service. I mean, this is the container that we are creating. What should be the inputs for this container? Obviously, what first thing, image colon Nginx hyphen alpine, and next what we passed, port number, right? Sports hyphen space host port colon container port. Same thing. Just whatever we write in Docker over there, we'll write it here. Of course, let's use a volume also. Docker volume create test as an example. So how to mount volume? Same thing. Just open it. Observe here. All the subheadings are in same line syntax. This is ML syntax. Volume, obviously. What is the volume? Test volume. I'll mount it slash opt something slash test, and that's it. Now imagine this as a Docker run command. Docker run hyphen d hyphen p hyphen v volumes. Finally, the image name. The same command we wrote here in ML format, right? If let me write it here only. Docker run hyphen d hyphen p 8080, sorry, 80 colon 80 hyphen hyphen name test. We haven't given this yet. We'll give. Don't worry. Hyphen v. What is the volume? Test colon slash opt slash test. What is the image name? Nginx colon alpine. See, this is what we wrote, right? This is the command we know so far. The same thing we wrote in ML format. If you observe here, UI will be the service name, because we define services, right? It's not a container name. Of course, if you don't give any container name, by default UI is the container name, but you can give the container name. No, container underscore name. What is the name? UI, simple. I mean, it's just giving something. UI or Nginx, something, whatever it is, it does not really matter. See, whatever we wrote here, same thing we wrote here also, except we wrote in one specific format. That's it. That's called YAML. That's called YAML. Got it? Now, one service is done. What's next? Tomcat, right? 808080. Name test1 as an example. Test1 will mount it. And of course, what is the image name? Tomcat 9, right? Now, same thing will write here in this format. Why Tomcat as an example. Image Tomcat colon 9 container underscore name. What is the container? Tomcat. Yeah, I can give on Tomcat. And ports. Same thing. Hyphen 8080 colon 8080. What is the volume? Volumes. Sorry, my mistake. Volumes. Same thing. Hyphen V. Test one. I'll mount it to slash opt slash test one. This opt path is Orvish as it, you know, right already. We have discussed this. Same command I wrote in a YAML format. That's it. See what we are doing here? Nothing really. We're just creating containers only. That's it so far. We're not doing anything extra. We're just creating containers only, but in a YAML format. That's it. Got it? This is what we are doing. Same command. Right now we got it like this. You can create n number of containers. Maybe what you want to create. Maybe anything else. Which one? Anything. Pick anything. See, there is nothing. You want to run Jenkins container? Yeah, you can run Jenkins. Jenkins image. What is the image? Jenkins slash Jenkins. Okay, let's search it. Why to Jenkins Docker image. Come on, Jenkins slash Jenkins LTS. Long time support. Colon LT. This is the image name. What is the container name? Container underscore name Jenkins. If you don't give container name also, it's fine because it will take it by default. Don't worry. But yeah, it's good to give. That's fine. Of course, ports 8080 host port already being used by Tomcat 8089 as an example. 8080 container port. Volume, you want to give anything? Yeah, give anything. Volumes test one volume. I'll give to sorry slash opt slash test Jenkins something. That's it. We're just creating containers. As I told you, we're just creating containers. Of course, see anything else we did extra apart from whatever we use in Docker run. No, right? This is what Docker Compose does. Docker Compose all it what happens is creates containers at a time using a file. That's it. That's the only thing it will do. Now what we do, we'll copy all this obviously, paste in a YAML file. Docker hyphen compose. As I told you, this is the default file. Paste it, save it. That's it. Now you have to execute this one file obviously. So before executing this, there are Docker compose commands which we'll see. Docker hyphen compose hyphen help. These are all the commands Docker compose have. If you see Docker compose up, create and start containers. It means Docker hyphen compose space up command, Docker hyphen compose space these commands. Up, it will create the containers, whatever you mentioned. Stop, it will stop the containers, obviously. Start, it will start the services means, the containers, obviously, which I'm saying. Down also command is that to remove the containers. Docker, of course, Docker Compose images, it's already logs and everything. So these are all the commands. You try it. I mean, of course, PS to see the list of containers which are running. So like this, there are commands you can able to use it. Of course, there is one more command called config, which will check for the syntax. Now let's see. Docker hyphen compose, sorry, compose config. There is something error. See, service Tomcat volumes must be an array. It means there is something wrong here. This is correct. Okay. Ah, see, we gave like this. Sorry, it's wrong, right? You should have told me. See, like this it should be. Now check the syntax. Why the hell it's going there? It's okay. I think YAML is taking there, but it's fine. Let's copy, open the compose file. See, it will show the syntax errors like this. Now, of course, there is one more thing. We have to give space. If the file is correct, it will show you the file. If not, it will show you errors like this, so that you can able to fix it. Ah, got it. Sorry. Yeah. So version, this is a warning actually, the attribute version is obsolete, it will be ignored, please remove it. Okay, it's not required, it seems. The version is not required anymore. Let's see, let's remove it. Got it. Now let's try it again. Let's try config. Service UI refers to unknown volume. Now it's throwing error that, hey, you defined a volume. Sorry, you're using a volume, Docker volume I'm using, right? Obviously. Sorry, what is error? You're using a volume, but we don't know about that. Docker Compose can't identify this volume, this test one or test whatever it is we defined. What we have to do, because these are Docker volumes, right? We created manually. If it is host path, it's fine. I mean, let me show you that also. We can mount host path also. Maybe let's say mkdir. Okay, there is a deployment, so we can mount it. Let's okay. For Jenkins, we'll mount the deployments. So host path you can give like this. The full path, of course, it will work. Why I gave dot? Because they are in the same folder. That's why. But always give full path. It's good. And of course, these are Docker volumes. Docker volumes, Docker Compose cannot figure it out. So what you have to do, you have to create a new sorry, you have to create a new section called volumes, and you have to say to Docker that, hey, these are my volumes. Now Docker Compose knows about the volumes. Let's see. See, now it worked, right? What's happening here is, if it show you the file, it means the syntax whatever you wrote in the Docker Compose file, it's correct. If it is showing something wrong like this, it's wrong. Somewhere we have to figure it out. And of course, if you want to use Docker volumes, you have to define the volume section like this. Then it will know. You may ask why the colon we left it, because we can give a name here. What is the name? Test. Without name also it's fine, but yeah, always give name. Don't ignore the name. Sorry. Now save it. So it worked. And if you observe from top services, Jenkins it's creating, which is fine. See, volumes bind user Mac. I mean, this is my path. That's why it is taking. It's mounting. Tomcat it's creating volume. It's mounting. See, UI. I mean, the Nginx container. See, and if you observe, it's creating one network. I haven't mentioned anywhere, but it will still create, because that's what Docker Compose does. As I told you, it will create containers. First, it will create a network, and then it will create a containers. And whatever the containers it's creating, it will keep all of them in a sorry, what is that? All of them in that network. And of course, volume is what we defined. And of course, we check the syntax, which is fine. Docker Compose config. Let's create them. Docker compose of up command. Up means it will create. Or you can pass -d to create in background. See, pulling the image, pull it. Something error. It means there is something wrong. Tom pull denied. Repository does not deserve merit. Docker line. Blah, blah. It's okay. So let me check the Nginx NGINX Alpine. Okay, it is fine. It is not pulling. It is trying to pull, but it says pull denied. Why the hell? Why the hell? So yeah, got it. Yeah. So what's happening is like it's not reading. It's not connecting to. It's not. It's trying to pull the image. It's trying to pull the image. So what do we have to do? Let's log into our Docker Hub account simply. Let's see. Yeah, login succeed. Let's try now. What the hell? UI error. Say, pull denied for Nginx Alpine repository does not exist. What the hell is happening? Even though we logged in, it's throwing error. All right, let's instead of this, let's up. We can see the clear error. What's happening? All right. Let's see what we wrote wrong. Nothing wrong. UI, the image. Yes. Yes, these are all fine. Yes, Nginx colon Alpine. Still, it is throwing error somewhere. Let's figure it out. Spelling is correct, right? NGNX Alpine. Yeah, this should be fine. Then let's do one thing. You know what I wrote? The image is wrong. No one told me. Nginx colon Alpine it is. Not hyphen Alpine. Alpine is a tag, right? Not hyphen. Not the image, part of image. That's why, see, these small errors. Of course, these are image wrong. Docker Compose cannot figure it out. Why it can't figure it out? It does not check for the image exist or not. Why it will check? Now it will work, see. Of course, it's pulling the image. It will take some time. There is no official image called Nginx hyphen Alpine. That's why it is there. Let's wait. It will take some time, obviously. Jenkins image is huge, obviously. It's created. See, they're all created. Of course, first thing if you see network is created, then Tomcat Jenkins. Of course, Docker PS. You'll see Docker hyphen compose PS. You'll see this. See, compose command also works fine. Let's say I want to delete all of these containers. Simple. No need to because it's created through compose, right? You can delete through compose or you can delete docker rm, that also is fine. Docker compose down. It deleted everything including the network. because it's created part of the network is created part of the compose, right? And of course, it will be decommissioned part of the compose. Now let's create again a python d. I want to delete one container only out of these three. Docker compose down Jenkins. See, only Jenkins is created. Sorry, deleted. See, like that. You can pass multiple commands. Docker compose restart means it'll restart the containers. What? Sorry, spelling wrong. It'll restart all the containers. If you want to restart specific thing, Docker. So like that. You can pass arguments like this. Now, of course, the container is gone. How to do it? Up again, it will create that one. See, as simple as that. Just one command, right? We created three containers instead of Docker run, -d, blah, 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 all these things. Docker compose up -d, that's it. Docker compose down, Docker compose restart, whatever it is, PS and everything. Like that, Docker compose will work. If we want to create multiple containers, we'll use this Docker compose. Writing a file, of course, the file may be smaller, but if the services keep on increasing, I mean containers keep on increasing, the file will be increasing, obviously. Depends on your requirement eventually. Got it? That's how we do it with compose. That's it. And of course, these three contents, whatever we created, they're all will be communicated each other. Why? Because they're all in same network by default, right? They're all in same network, right? You can able to communicate each other by default, right? It's default behavior. Got it? And that's about compose. One last thing I'll say before closing this topic. Let's say what's happening now, you know, volumes we have used already. I mean, we created and we are using it. Similar way, instead of Docker Compose creating a network, I have my own network. I want to use that. How to use it? First, let's create a network. Docker network, sorry, create which network? Testnet, something. Now I want to use this testnet in my Compose. How you use it? Simple. Similar way how we defined the volumes. First thing we have to define the networks also. Networks, sorry. What is the network name? Maybe give testnet. I mean, this is what we'll be using. And what is the name of the network? Name testnet. Obviously, this is what we created. Next, external colon true. Pass this one. So what happens is with this external to what we are doing is we are telling Docker Compose that hey, there is a network already called a testnet. Use that. Do not create it. If you don't pass this line, Docker Compose will create it newly. But it's already exists. That's why external true means it's already exists. Please use that network. That's it. Now, how to use in here in volume? Simply add one more tab called networks and use the name where, sorry, use the name what you gave here. Let's say compose net, something. Just to clarify, this is the network name which we want to use. This is the name which we gave in the compose to use for the compose to use. Compose hyphen test. Now what happens now? Sorry, compose hyphen net. What happens now is this will look for compose net definition. Okay, compose net is fine. Inside that there is a network called test net which I need to use. Of course, you can use same name, but I just want to show you this name is for the compose to identify. This is our Docker network name, obviously. Same thing you write for all the containers. Volumes, okay. Let's give a line gap. Wait to networks. What is the net? Compose hyphen net. Same thing. Of course, I'm just typing it. Copy paste. You can do it. Networks compose hyphen net. That's it. Let's see what you have to do first thing. If you write something, config to check the syntax. All good. See, now create. If you observe now, only containers are created, not the network. Why? Because network is already created. We don't want it to create. That's why you pass it this line called external true. That's why. That's why you pass it like this. Got it? Now down, obviously you can down it, but it won't delete the network. See, it's deleted only these things. Why? Again, the Docker network or Docker volume, they are not created as part of Docker Compose. They are part of outside. I mean, they're outside of Compose. Only these containers are created as part of Compose, right? That's why it's managing only that. Got it? So yeah, as simple as that. That's how you define network also. Got it? Now I have one more requirement, a small one in Compose only. So I have three containers, right? I want Jenkins container to be created after Tomcat or let anything. I want Tomcat container to be created after UI like that. One by one. I want to create like that. Maybe because I have a dependency. So Tomcat will work only if UI container started running or UI will work only if Tomcat started running. So there is a dependency here. But Docker Compose does not know that, right, by default. So to do that, to create a thing like that, that one container will create after some one other container is created successfully. There is something called depends on Tomcat. Now what happens is this UI container will wait until the Tomcat container is created and then it will create because depends on Tomcat. UI is depends on Tomcat. So it will create first. After that, this UI container will be created. Like this, you can write depends on for any container. Let's say Tomcat needs to be created after Jenkins. Simple, we write it. Here also depends on what is it? Jenkins. So now what happens? First Jenkins will create because Tomcat is depend on it, right? Next Tomcat will create because UI is depend on it. Finally, UI will create. That's it. Let's see the order. Let's see the configuration first. Correct? Now let's see the order. See first what happens. See here. Tomcat Jenkins UI it's created. This because we have there is no order, we haven't defined any dependency. But here Jenkins is created, later Tomcat is created because Tomcat depends on Jenkins. Now UI is dependent on Tomcat, like that. See the order. Let's delete, observe it. It's reverse. Observe that. Because here there is a dependency to create. So delete it will be reverse, obviously, right? This is not dependent on anyone. So it will delete first. This will delete next because this was the dependency for this. That's why. That's how it will work. That depends underscore on argument. Got it? It's a small argument now where we can able to link like this. Depends if one container depends on another container, we can able to do like this. That's all about Docker Compose. Any doubts so far? Any doubts? It's very simple. I mean, it's not doing anything extra. We're not doing anything extra here. We're just creating the containers. Instead of running Docker run command, we're just creating in a file. That's it. That's the only thing we are doing. Any questions so far? Anything? Any doubts? We'll have one more topic. Don't leave. So I'll just stop the record and I'll start again. But yeah, this is about Docker Compose. So let me know if you have any doubts. All right. Let's s- you know start again with a new topic.